Talks, rumors, and internal conflict abound. It's not The Bachelor, it's NBA free agency. Plus, homegrown kids and international prospects alike find their new basketball homes. It's an NBA spectacular today on Tailgaters. Coming right up. Welcome into Tailgaters. My name is JJ Angelo, and this is Shane Palma. Shane, how are we doing today?
Well, we're coming towards the end of November, and while probably most people would be feeling a little bit more festive, we went tropical today. But I don't hate it. I can tell you, I actually really like this thing.
I enjoy it too. Look, it's getting cold outside, but we're just warming up in here. We got a lot to talk about today, and it's just about all NBA related. But I do have one thing to mention very quickly, non-basketball related, since we did do so last week. Dustin Johnson is your 2020 Masters winner, and quite honestly, I have to apologize for disrespecting the name. I was looking for those crazy exotic names, and I guess name really doesn't have anything to do with golf ability.
Listen, Johnson ran away with this one truly. A little competition, neck-and-neck race after round one, but by Sunday, there was no doubt he'd take home the green jacket. JJ, I told you this. I said Dustin Johnson's name. You didn't have him anywhere in the script, and I was like, where's Dustin Johnson? And you're like, oh, Dustin Johnson. And I was like, Dustin Johnson.
Yeah,
and you were like, whatever. And I was like, all right.
You did say Dustin Johnson. I'm sorry. I'll do better next time.
I accept your apology. Just know that I know golf now.
Yeah.
I think I can claim that I now know golf. The fact that I knew that Dustin Johnson's the number one golfer and would win this tournament.
You can do that now. Well, moving on from golf and into what are the real meat and potatoes of our show today. And to help us out today with this year's draft class, we're talking NBA this year, I talked to NBA analyst and host of the Prep to Pro podcast, Mr. Ben Pfeifer. Check it out right here. Ben, thanks for joining in. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, JJ. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for talking draft with us. Well, we're just one day out from the draft, right? Just coming in tomorrow, and there's still a lot of uncertainty with who is going to be that number one overall pick, which hasn't really been a problem in the past. Why do you think that is, and what would you like to see happen there personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most likely scenario at this point is probably just LaMelo ending up on the Wolves. I think that's kind of been where the intel is at for a while now. And I think that's probably what they should do. It's a tough spot for them because I think LaMelo is the best prospect in this class, but he's not like the best fit for the Wolves, who are trying to win right now with D'Angelo and Cat. It seems, at least, because defensively that backcourt's going to be that trio is really problematic defensively. And I think D'Angelo and LaMelo can maybe work in the long term. For LaMelo, you want him to be like playing on the ball and running a lot of pick and rolls, and that's also what D'Angelo does. So I definitely see concern, but it's tough. All of it seems like of the realistic number one options being LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, and James Wiseman, I definitely think LaMelo is the best prospect and just the best option for Minnesota. So that's what I think they should do, and that's what I assume they probably will do. But I don't know. Maybe there'll be a trade. Maybe they'll do something surprising. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, yeah, LaMelo Ball, I mean, he's been the talk of this draft, really, the number one guy people have been talking about for well over a year. But still, a lot of questions about his game, about his ability to be an effective player in the NBA. Why do you think he's deserving of that top spot?
Yeah, I mean, there's some legitimate questions, mainly just, his frame needs a lot of work, just needs to add a lot of strength. I think that'll help him, as a finisher and driver. And then, some people are very concerned about the shot. I'm like a little concerned, but not that concerned, because I don't think he has to be that great of a shooter for his role. Because he's 6'7", genius passer, the best passer in the class, one of the best passers at his height in the world. Just with his creativity and manipulation of the defense and, ability to hit passes from all kinds of weird angles. And then, he's an incredible ball handler and just, kind of gets to spots in ways that no other guys in this class can, with his handle and, his touch from around the free throw line area on floaters. I think offensively, while he's not going to be I don't think he's the guy who's the best player on a championship team. I think he can certainly be the second best player, someone who runs a lot of good offense. And defensively, like, yes, he's not very good right now, but I think he's actually a pretty good defensive prospect. As again, very young. I mean, crazy young, tall, super super smart. And then just like has never played basketball defense before this year. Like this is his first year learning how to play defense,
Yeah.
and there's going to be a steep learning curve, especially when your starting point is in an actual professional league overseas, which is not the NBA, but still like some pretty good competition. So I think as he matures, he's going to get better. I think he's going to be really impactful off the ball. Already like flashes some ability to make plays off the ball with good steals and blocks just because of how smart he is. I think on the ball he's always going to struggle a little bit, but I think he could get to the point where he's good enough. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely concerns, and like he's not a sure thing, but nobody else in this class really is. So
That's true. Yeah. Another guy you're talking about, and same kind of goes with the uncertainties. James Wiseman. He's likely a top 3, top 5 pick in this draft, but someone you personally have never been high on since the day I met you. Why should teams be wary of drafting Wiseman?
I think just he doesn't really provide the ceiling and the upside that you look for in a top pick. I think upsides like often characterized as something defined by like tools and athleticism and size, which definitely that's a part of it, but I think that's pretty reductive. As Wiseman, I think he's really more of a big man who like raises your floor and helps like a bad team get better than a good team get better, which is kind of what you want at the top pick. Because Wiseman's just being 7'1" with his wingspan and ability to move in the open floor, like, he's gonna be a monster. In the pick and roll, he's gonna like get a bunch of dunks in the half court. He's gonna probably be a solid rim protector just because he's so large and imposing, and you can just park him at the rim and he's going to be able to deter shots. But I think he lacks the high end decision making or ability to defensive mobility to guard multiple pick and roll coverages or shooting or playmaking or really like any self creation. So I think he's someone who helps, is definitely I think going to be a good NBA player and probably will have like an impact for a solid impact, especially in the regular season for a long time. But I'm just not sure he's a player who really elevates you in the playoffs or like helps you win in the playoffs, which is when I'm evaluating, that's what I'm looking for, is players who, push you closer to a championship. I know that that's not what all NBA teams value and prioritize, but it's like certain that's why I am, lower on Wiseman as someone who my goal would be, trying to win a title. And I don't think he helps you as much as other prospects.
Yeah, I think that's probably that's a problem a lot of people are seeing with this draft. This draft class has been said to be lacking a generational talent, in comparison to even last year's draft with Zion Williamson, John Morant, those type of guys. But that being said, what's a name people might be surprised to be taken with a lottery pick, but could you think has the potential to be a great piece on a NBA team, someone who is going to elevate?
Yeah, I'll bring up Tyrese Maxey, as you probably could have guessed.
Sure.
Yeah, just Kentucky guard who is fallen down board. I think largely because he didn't really shoot the three well this past season, and like he wasn't his steals and block numbers weren't as high as they could have been. But I think he's often misunderstood as like not like he's not like a point guard. Like yes, I think his biggest like real weaknesses, because I don't think the shooting is a weakness at all. I think he's going to be a very good shooter. The real weaknesses are that he can't really dribble in isolation and he's not a good passer. So I think that means he can't play on the ball. But next to on a team like the Pelicans with Zion or the Mavs with Luka or someone that already has like their big creator, like the guy who's running their offense, I think Maxey slots in beautifully as like a secondary score, just because he is so explosive off the catch. His first step, his decisiveness attacking. Once he gets to the rim, he has so much strength and touch and balance to finish, and he has the floater and the mid range pull up. So he's like I think real 3-level scorer potential. And then defensively, like being 6'3" and strong and long, going to be good on the ball. And I think he's going to be good off the ball as well. So just someone who can add a lot of value without taking up possessions and is just again like needs a certain system to thrive. Yeah, which is why he's not like a player you can like take number one or at the top of the draft and really like thrust him in to run your offense. But like he's a player who, if you have the team in place, I think he can be really really good.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time, Ben. Before we go, tell us, why should the people listen to you, and where can we find you otherwise?
Why should they listen to me? That's a good question that I don't get very often. I don't know, because they seem to enjoy the things that I say and attain some sort of value out of it. So if you do, yeah, the main thing I do is, well, you can find me on Twitter at Ben_Pfeifer_. I co-host the Prep to Pro NBA Draft podcast, where I talk all things draft. So that's kind of the place where you can catch my draft work most if you want to hear more.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Ben. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, JJ.
So we talked about the uniqueness of this year's draft with seemingly no clear number one overall pick. So Shane, there's a lot more grace this year if you're wrong, but who do you think that top guy should be?
Well, I'm going to disagree. I think there is a top pick, and for me, it's got to be LaMelo Ball. I mean, I could go on about all his intangibles, but there's no need to really waste any time on that because I think he by far is the most talented prospect in this draft class. What I do want to mention about LaMelo Ball is the fact that you haven't heard too much from LeVar during this whole process like we did for Lonzo Ball, and I think that could be for the better. Melo could easily make the best or be the best out of the three Ball brothers, and by LeVar taking more of a step back, it will allow for him to grow into his own and be taken more seriously, not only by the league, but by the media as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think I did see today was like the first time LeVar really spoken out. I think he was on First Take or something, just of course saying, my son should be the number one overall pick, but nowhere near the antics of last time around.
Way more reserved, and I think that suits the entire family better. I think that suits Ball's stock better. I think, honestly, if LeVar was going on the tangents that he did when Lonzo was being drafted, LaMelo could have fell a little bit because not every team wants to have to deal with LeVar's antics, I'll be honest.
No, genuinely not. But moving on, so you got the first overall pick. I think Ball is probably a good spot, maybe Anthony Edwards. But I'm really interested in that second pick, which the Golden State Warriors hold. The Warriors, a dynasty, and now they have the second pick after a year that they were decimated by injuries, of course. But I think it's most likely of those lottery picks to be traded away. There's some talk of using that number 2 spot to trade for Bradley Beal. I think that might be a good move for them. Maybe even trade back in the draft, pick up a more rotational piece player like Clint Capella per se. There's a little bit talks moving back with that. I think the Warriors will end up taking the pick ultimately, and I think they'll probably take James Wiseman, a solid forward, a guy who needs some work but has the potential to be a team cornerstone in the future.
I mean, you look at the Warriors team, and honestly, I don't think this past year, you see all the injuries, I don't think it could have gone any better. I don't know if they would have competed this year. They probably would if they had their full team healthy, but you take basically a year off. You get Curry rested, Clay is rested, you got Draymond back where he belongs, and now you have the second overall pick.
Yeah.
That is a lot of power in your hands right there. Curry was being compared to Michael Jordan at one point during their playoff run a few years ago. Klay Thompson, obviously a great piece to go along with Curry, and like I mentioned, Draymond Green just still a centerpiece there. I know they lost Durant, but I think keeping the second overall pick, taking Wiseman, building off of him for the future to not worry about just the now, the Warriors could dominate for the next 10 years.
They're just rebuilding this year. I mean, they're not rebuilding like most teams are. They're retooling. They're getting ready for another run. I wouldn't be surprised 2 championships in the next 5 years. They still have generational talent, top players in the NBA all over that roster.
Very well could happen. And while they're looking at maybe retooling for the future, some teams are going a full rebuild. Some teams aren't touching their rosters. It's going to be interesting to see what we get out of this NBA free agency.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And to get us a little bit more familiar with the wildest time of the year in the NBA, it is 23 Sports' own Darnell Tabor with the package.
First big move of the NBA offseason, the defending champion Lakers acquired Dennis Schroeder from the Oklahoma City Thunder, and in return, they gave Danny Green up and this year's 28th pick. A huge move as the Suns acquired Chris Paul and Abdel Nader, and in return, they gave up Kelly Oubre, Ricky Rubio, Ty Jerome, Jalen LeCue, and a 2022 first-round pick. That should be a huge move for the Phoenix Suns. Our next pickup, the Bucks acquired Drew Holiday from the Pelicans, probably to keep Giannis Antetokounmpo around longer, and in return, they gave away Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, 3 first and 2 pick swaps. Another move by the Milwaukee Bucks as they acquired Bogdan Bogdanovic from the Sacramento Kings, and in return, the Kings acquired Dante DiVincenzo, Ersan Ilyasova, DJ Wilson, and Justin James. Our next move involves the Houston Rockets and the Portland Trailblazers, as the Trailblazers acquired Robert Covington and The Rockets acquired Trevor Ariza once again in a pick. Anthony Davis has decided to opt out of his player option for next season, but looks to resign as the Lakers did win the NBA Finals this year. James Harden has grown unhappy in Houston as he declined the option to sign a $50 million contract extension and looks to be traded either to the Philadelphia 76ers or the Brooklyn Nets. That is a huge scare. Russell Westbrook also wants out of Houston as he looks to be traded to either the Charlotte Hornets or the New York Knicks.
And welcome back. And Darnell, welcome on. Dude, you're becoming a regular on our show, and we love having you. How you doing today?
Really do.
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Tropical.
Yeah. feeling Hawaiian today. Well, in comparison to the NFL, which we just talked about a couple weeks ago, the NBA trade deadline has had no shortage of big moves. Let's discuss winners and losers from some of the bigger headlines today. Starting off with the Milwaukee Bucks, they acquire Bogdanovic and Drew Holiday from the Kings and Pels, respectively. They give up a total of 5 players. Eric Bledsoe, one of the bigger names, DJ Wilson, and 3 future first-round picks in return, a couple more draft swaps. Do you think they gave up too much for these players?
No, because when you have a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo
Yeah.
on your team that can lead, you're really never giving up too much because you want to win now. You have a win now player, so you have to do what it takes to win now. So you're never really giving up too much because first-round picks, you don't know who those players are. So, but you do know who Giannis is, and you want to keep him around for as long as you can.
Everyone's calling Bledsoe, Drew Holiday, and Giannis this big three to be feared in the East. That might be one of the weaker big threes I've ever heard of. I mean, Giannis obviously great, top player in the league. Drew Holiday, yes, he's a very great compliment to someone like Giannis. Bledsoe, okay, he's a solid role player. I wouldn't put him as anything more than an above-average point guard. But besides that, I mean, they lost a lot of depth on their bench. Their starting 5, fine. Brook Lopez still there. They obviously got Bogdanovic. Behind them, you lost a lot of key players there. I know in this day and age you go for the star power and you want those big players like we saw with the Lakers with Anthony Davis and LeBron. But the Lakers did a great job of building their bench to their strengths. They got J.R. Smith out of nowhere. They had guys like JaVale McGee and Danny Green, Rondo, all these guys that had a role either when they put them in the starting lineup or on their bench. They were able to rotate them in a way that helped them get to the championship and ultimately win it. I don't know if the Bucks building off just the 5 that they have is going to ultimately work.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I think it can definitely get them out of the Eastern Conference because as you get deeper and deeper into the playoffs, your rotation, it shrinks and it shrinks. We saw a team like the Clippers had lots of depth, but it just didn't work out. So really, you want star power. If you're going to pick, you want star power over depth because a lot of those players, you have to get them in rhythm in games. You just want stars. You want to know what you're going to get each night,
I'll come back right at you with that one. You had Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and you didn't make it to the finals. You talk about star power. Those are 2 of the bigger stars in the league. You had the depth. You had the stars. Sometimes it comes down to chemistry, too, because if the team's not gelling, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, but can I come right back?
Go for it.
So the Clippers, on top of those 2 superstar players, they have the depth. But do you think if they traded that depth in for maybe a 3rd star, do you think we're having a different conversation here now?
I mean, yes and no. I think if you have, Kawhi led the Raptors to a championship, and the Raptors obviously had the depth too. I think the Raptors were kind of similar to this year's Clippers. Maybe it was the Paul George effect. I don't know. Maybe he's not that superstar caliber player that you would make of a LeBron and Davis and a Kawhi and George. I think there's a significant difference there between the 2. But we're both right on this one. Depth wins, stars win. That's how it's going to be in this league.
Yeah, well, sorry to cut off any more interactions, but on the west side of the NBA, one of my favorite trades that's happened so far, the Suns get Chris Paul. They trade away Kelly Oubre, Ricky Rubio, and a couple other guys, and a 2022 first-round pick. But I think this is a great trade. I don't really see a loser in this scenario. The Suns get their true point guard to pair well with Devin Booker. The Thunder continue to build draft capital and get these role players that seem to be working. I mean, besides Chris Paul, and Shai Gilgeous, which maybe not even an elite name yet. They're just kind of built a team built on role players, but it seems to be working. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on this trade?
So I really love the move. You get more picks and more players that you can trade. A lot of people will talk about how these picks can really just trade you for a superstar name if you want to get one in the future. So I really like the moves that the Oklahoma City Thunder are making. Yeah.
I'll just say this about Chris Paul. I wanted him to be a Knick. I thought he would have been a great fit in New York.
Sure.
I understand that he's getting up there in age, and some people might think the Suns got absolutely robbed for Chris Paul. But people thought Chris Paul was honestly washed last year, and he proved that he can lead a team like the Thunder to the playoffs. I think pairing him with Booker, and obviously you still have DeAndre Ayton there,
Of
is
course,
going to be
yeah.
a huge factor going on for the next decade there as long as he stays with the Suns. I think this team's going to be great next year. I really do. There's a lot of contending teams there in the West, but I think if you look at them as maybe a 6-7 seed, they'll be right there.
I agree. Well, moving just a bit further to the West, let's talk Lakers real quick. Lakers today or yesterday, or there's still talks. They haven't finalized the trade, last I heard, but they're trying to make a move to get Dennis Schroeder from OKC in exchange for Danny Green. And also, Lakers related, Anthony Davis will enter free agency, but is looking for a bigger contract with LA. I don't think he's going anywhere, but who knows?
Listen, there was
No.
rumors. There was rumors swirling last year that he could end up as a Boston Celtic. Back when he was traded to the Lakers, there was, maybe there was a package that was going to happen. Now he's available in free agency. Boston could potentially go out and sign him. Maybe if they trade a few pieces away, that's not going to happen.
No.
He's built such a great rapport with LeBron there in LA. I honestly can see them going on to win multiple more championships as long as LeBron stays at this high caliber player that he's been for so long.
And Darnell, you say no doubt he's a Laker?
Yeah, he's a Laker. Laker for life.
I would agree.
I think
for
so
life.
too.
Okay. I don't know about for life. I could see 3-4 more years in LA, and then maybe
As
returns
long
to
as
his
LeBron's
hometown.
there, which is
Chicago. As long as
the
LeBron
next
is
probably
there, yeah.
3-ish years, I would say, until LeBron goes to the Lakers when he's 40-something. Or the Lakers. He goes from the Lakers to the Knicks.
Okay.
And then the Knicks already have a great team, and he says that he carries the Knicks to a championship, but that's beside the point. I think we're going to get into some Knicks talk right now, right?
Well, we're not talking that New York team, but we are talking a little bit the other New York team. As much as to your disappointment, it looks like James Harden is going to be playing for the Brooklyn Nets next
Crazy.
season, which is insane. Russell Westbrook, he's also trying to find a new team, but
Could be the Knicks.
could be the Knicks. But I really want to talk about James Harden. I think, look, I said it before we came on the show. I think this is kind of foolish on James Harden. He literally is just going to the Nets just to play with the boys, just to hoop with the homies.
Well, hoop with the homies and get a ring. So
Potentially, but there's going to be a lot of battle for the ball, a lot of selfishness ball playing. You don't think?
no, I don't think so because I think James Harden knows, Kyrie knows, KD knows that when you have players that good, because down the stretch of games, you don't even run plays or sets. It's really just a lot of isolation ball.
Sure.
And that's what wins you games. It's like, how can our stars beat their stars at the end of the day? And if you have more stars that you can go to, I think you're great.
Listen, if Nets want to give up more picks to win now, and they think that's the move, and trading away Dinwiddie and LeVert and Allen and all those guys is going to help them, then, I mean, by all means, go for it. That's definitely a stronger big three than the big three that I mentioned with the Bucks. I think they would definitely handle the Bucks in the playoffs if they face them. Harden, KD, Kyrie, that could easily contend with the Lakers for a championship.
It's a scary look, but I am definitely looking forward to seeing how it plays out. We're all looking forward in anticipation these next few days in the basketball world. And with that, we want to thank you so much for joining us today on Tailgaters. For Shane Palma and Darnell Tabor, my name is JJ Angelo. Stay safe, enjoy the madness, and remember, only you can prevent forest fires. Take it easy.